Welcome everyone to another quick live stream here from not in the office, so excuse the echo and audio and stuff. Zero frame. So something I wanted to talk about some months ago already, but busy and stuff, is came across some alternatives of Unix and nowadays GNU and BSD tools, and this accounts for stuff like DU, disk usage and similar such stuff. We mostly had two variants of that. One came from all the classic Unixes, and with that to BSDs. They were truly minimal from the time PDP 11 and other such 70s and 80s gear, where stuff was the most minimal, like barely, like only the most minimal code needed for a tool to do a job. At times they are still somewhat minimal in BSD. Even in macOS, for example, SED did not really have a real replace -i, although in macOS it has -i for in place, but some extensions. So on macOS I always type SED -i quote so whatever. But even regular expressions in SED and disk usage and ifconfig and all this stuff. So in Linux, of course, we mostly use GNU tools, although even that became controversial in this day and age. If we're not using BusyBox, or even there people can't agree and don't like the C code quality, people have rewritten that minimal stuff in Toybox, because BusyBox is never enough on Toybox. That is mostly the quick summary of the state of stuff. And I came across some folks here even making already lists on GitHub and websites, modern Unix. For example, so what are we talking? So for example, starting with BAT, cat clone with syntax highlighting and Git integration. The question, so cat usually just opens a file or standard input and outputs the stuff. The DOS equivalent in Windows is ironically type. It's like, seriously, what the heck, but just in case you wondered. Super handy. Well, mostly you don't even use it that much. If you are shell programming and other stuff, you usually redirect with greater and smaller input redirection operators, but otherwise you still sometimes need or use it. I mostly use it to quickly check the content of a file. Although even that I sometimes use grep dot to grab everything, like grep space dot space, and especially sysfs if you're navigating Linux sysfs somewhere there and there are like 7 files, storage controller and USB stuff, like grep space dot space star to get a nice list of grep outputting the file names, or like max timeout and stuff. Anyway, so BAT clone with syntax highlighting. The question is, do we really need this? But on the other hand, yeah, this is of course the true opposite of keeping it stupid simple. It's like, yeah, adding each freaking feature like syntax highlighting and Git integration. It's like, yeah. But there are some better examples. For example, EXA, a modern replacement to LS. You might wonder what is wrong with LS. Well, here you see, as usual, nicer looking use of eye candy, even on the terminal. More colors, more headline. I think it can even print icons. I think I tested that. There is some variant with icons. You need some special font for that. That is relatively cool. However, I think they don't even have that here. We can quickly EXA icon ls something. Let's see if Google finds icons EXA here. That is relatively cool, but is rather limited. I even tried that. Limited because first of all you need a font with this bloody icons, Unicode icons, and then it's limited to just what is available in Unicode. So you are not getting like a image preview, but it's like, yeah, images. I have to say that sounded cool at first. I tried this a month ago. Do I even have that, like maybe still actually we could have that. Excel must have tried, or yeah, whatever, probably. Or I didn't install that. I didn't install it. What was it? Build. Actually, find Rust stuff. Of course, in target debug. Excel, although I don't have the font installed right now because it was buggy. There are a couple of websites with patched fonts, and in the previous live stream it was seen that I have had some font glitches. Actually was using that until recently, but previous video PyTop exposed some font glitches in that font. Whatever that was, so it's like this is default stuff, and then I don't even does it have help? H does whatever. Of course, you would set an alias for that if you wanted on a daily basis. Use icon. You are just icons. Fair enough. But yeah, right now I don't have the icon font, so yeah, there would be the icon. But this is the kind of stuff you see the website on Twitter and website and stuff and Medium. It's like, hey, cool new stuff. And it looked nice on these examples, but due to the nature of the few examples you see here, images, like all images have that then, except maybe GIF and JPEG, tiny little bit different. In practice, it was like, yeah, the novelty wore off after just like 5 minutes. If you use any of this stuff, leave in the comments below. What would be even cooler is, I think I need to check, maybe there was some alternative user-defined graphic terminal stuff. I think actually we could fact check that. What would be cool is real thumbnails of the stuff. So terminal bitmap graphics, something maybe potentially. There was something, but of course stuff not used often. But whatever, you terminal displaying graphical pictures, maybe that sort of kinda. Or is it a... It's probably a question. Yeah, something. Maybe it's possible. Correct me, like Excel. I think we found this earlier. Probably should have googled it before the live stream. Always. Short for 6 pixels. Bitmap format supportable terminals and printers from DEC. Consists of a pattern of 6 pixels, height, 1 width. Yeah, so maybe there is something like, yeah, apparently new standard for 634. Yeah, anyway, let's move on. But that would certainly be much cooler than a bloody font. LSD, next gen file listing command, backward compatible with LS, again with this freaking icons that are mostly somewhat pointless, but whatever. And you see here with some fancy prompt, I come to that in a moment. That also, but again, this is most of the stuff is eye candy. Even that, it's just like graphical polishing stuff of making your directory tree there a little bit more nicer looking. I have to say, some of the stuff, of course, gives that a little bit flair of Hollywood movie terminal stuff. Of it's like, yeah, you have always this good old-fashioned terminal stuff, and then Hollywood movie, and you have this fancy super fish and whatever. Anyway, back to that in a moment. Then Delta, viewer for Git and diff output. Here Dust, modern intuitive version of DU written in Rust. I have to say, recently I actually needed something of that. I knew one of the first stuff implementing something like that was in KDE some 15 years ago. What was the name of that? There was some cluster, maybe even a Dolphin. Yes, I think it was Dolphin back in the day. A plugin of like cluster view. In the meantime, a couple of programs have that kind of cluster view. Cluster disk search. That is actually quite usable to find where very big files are hiding. Of course, when you Google that, you find some random nonsense. But this could actually be pretty nice, especially if you do remote maintenance and otherwise work on the terminal, DAF, a better DF alternative. Some of this looks a little bit like an SQL or SQL, for those who pronounce it that way. Stuff. I have to say, again, not unless it's backward compatible and you can pipe this through other stuff to use in shell scripts. The problem with some of this stuff is, of course, backward compatibility and shell scripting, but otherwise some cool ideas, and maybe it's time to reinvent the terminal shell stuff more than just some fancy stuff, if similar to Microsoft PowerShell and so on. broot or broot, or a new way to see and navigate directory trees. Again, FD is simple, fast, and user-friendly alternative to find. Find. Some of this good old-fashioned command line stuff is of course super annoying, and maybe some of the stuff should also be more intuitive. Some, especially like piping stuff with xargs and variants, and even find. This of course, newbies to computing of course first need to read the freaking manual to get all the options. And additionally, that find needs the directory name in the beginning. I think this is also something that annoys me in BSDs, especially macOS, that I think you need find. You cannot run like original Unix needed the directory to find in. GNU find defaults to just current directory dot, so you can just find name whatever. I think macOS errors out with syntax error of specify directory, something. Anyway, user-friendly is one of the things. Maybe there is a huge potential of making all the stuff much more user-friendly, because, well, sure, there is help, but the discoverability of that is of course not as amazing. Maybe some more interactive way of working with command line stuff could be huge bumps in usability. Let's quickly, we have some people tuning in. That is amazing. People say that would break a lot of stuff. Replacement not even feature compliant with. Yeah, I'm not saying so. People raise the concern. I think I raised this concern myself some 5 minutes ago of shell scripting and so on. Michael has found some repository of tools. We'll try them. Yeah, leave in the comments below. Always happy to see in the comments or Discord what you found. Is there a Rust toolchain for PowerPC 64 cell architecture? Well, for the PowerPC, of course, that just works, just not targeting the cell SPEs. You need to specifically program those, but otherwise PowerPC stuff in Rust just works. TM, bare metal PowerPC, Linux, TN2 support platform. Yeah. So let's continue. RIP grep, an extremely fast alternative to grep. I have to say some of the stuff is like written in Rust and should be faster, and then when you benchmark this, sometimes not. GNU grep is also highly optimized, of course. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the stuff, hey, we rewritten this in Rust and now it's faster. Yeah, maybe faster than some unoptimized BSD stuff from good old Unix days, but GNU grep in the meantime, highly optimized regular expression library. But also speed is usually, unless I run it on P3 or latest RISC-V embedded board here, previous video, is not something that grep is lacking, but then I run the highly optimized GNU variant on T2 Linux. Also, if you're new to this stuff, of course, we run your own Linux distribution, right? So my speed stuff is a little biased of like, yeah, of course it's fast in T2. Egg, a code search tool similar to Egg but faster. So there's the funny stuff of, hey, we had Egg, but hey, now we do it again, but fast is like, yeah, not invented here, maybe written in Rust. Also, this looks like actually a Windows screenshot. Obviously would not be, yeah, on Windows, of course, the problem is that you have the DOS tools and not the Unix tools. It's like, yeah, type instead of cat, and everything sucks basically. Try to find, and yeah, it's like lead DOS. Then fifth general purpose command line, fuzzy finder. Maybe quite nice, and MacFly fly through your shell history. Although I have to say, so some of the stuff like McFly doesn't sound like something I would need. I usually use Control R for reverse search. Anyway, as seen here on my live streams, quite power user of shell and tools and shell scripting and stuff. So Control R reverse search for me, not really sure if I would need more for that. Although maybe one could argue the search as a built-in like bash or so search should be more interactive, maybe listing more lines, like the next lines for better navigation or something there. But all those tools basically show there is room for innovation, and the last 20 years, 33 decades, the GNU stuff of course innovated of adding more options, but usually like disk usage, -H for human readable sizes, like auto scaling to kilo, mega and giga and terabytes. I think something the BSD tools, at least not macOS, probably doesn't have. So more options like SED, regular expressions, or grep regular expressions, or SED, other processing options, which, yeah, but not like interactivity, other like graphical icons and stuff. It's like, yeah, the questions, of course, this is in my Let's Talk stuff of trying to put here alternative operating system, like non-mainstream, not Windows, macOS stuff, and stuff professionals use every day. And so Let's Talk series of like, hey, let's talk about the stuff. Basically, I'm also just discovering that I also see compatibility issues, but it's interesting for me nonetheless of after 20 years in this T2 Oracle Linux-based Linux distribution business that there are people now working on new modern alternatives, and maybe some of these ideas are actually good and worth to discover or use. Or for example, JQ, I've seen that some months ago already, SED for JSON data. That is actually pretty clever because raise your hand, certainly I at times want to SED in XML and JSON, and certainly doing that in SED is way more error prone and complex. So, sorry, excuse me, coffee. So that is actually pretty clever, some SED stuff for JSON, XML and similar TOML and so on. SD and intuitive find and replacement CLI. So again, similar stuff of SED, and some stuff what I of course usually do. The nature of those command line tools is you run them and they do this stuff. What I usually do, of course, 20 years experience, I first usually SED to standard out, then SED with SEDN for not print, and then substitute whatever print to just not see, to better see the single trees in the forest when I work with regular expressions in like substituting thousands of files in T2, source code, Linux kernel and so on. And I can imagine my stuff is of course usually in Subversion or Git, and people, if you substitute stuff not in Subversion or Git, stuff becomes of course more error prone. So some of the stuff like intuitive or interactive stuff might actually be helpful, not even for newcomers, but even for expert professionals working on in that moment data, not in version control systems. And cheat, create and view interactive sheets on the command line. That's actually also an interesting idea. I of course have like to do or plan files, or as seen in my live streams, my infamous T2 to do that's usually growing faster than I can work on that. So some built-in tools for that actually potentially quite helpful. It's a little bit similar. I usually don't need cheat stuff for SED and so on. If I need to look something up, I just read the freaking manual or info page. But nonetheless, interesting idea what people come up with. In this department TLDR, community effort to simplify man pages with practical examples. I have to say, sometimes the man pages, I had actually a poll some months ago with, are man pages still worth it? And I find them, of course, the Linux man pages, there are quite some people who put quite some efforts in it, but at times they can be a little bit annoying. So maybe it's a little bit of Linux man pages, additional community efforts, but it's of course not a program, but some interesting community development nonetheless. Bottom, yet another cross-platform graphical process system monitor. We had this the other video. We packaged bpytop. I think bpytop have that here. That actually was pretty cool. Not sure why RxBT. Maybe RxBT was not amazing. Anyway, it looked better in other Alacrity and so on. So yeah, you can never have too many of those. Had some videos about those though, but it's of course, yeah, we have top of proc PS, so top A-top from decades ago, then H-top, now bpytop. bpytop actually pretty cool, if it looks better in some more advanced terminal. But yeah, even more stuff, yet another cross-platform stuff, but yeah, not invented here. 5, 10 dozen alternatives, still not good enough. But yeah, this look actually glances here an eye on your system. That also looks pretty cool. I probably leave in the comments below. I usually do more random live stuff on that corner there, other channel, and I probably could actually do a packaging some of the stuff. It's certainly nice to have. I packaged bpytop, which I found pretty useful, and this glances thing also looks pretty useful, to be honest. Not sure if it's written in Rust, so, but that is not a requirement for me, to be honest. Rust is nice, but not necessarily the one and only. Let's see. Glances can we also. This is also Python, so that is apparently similar to bpytop, at least on the. I'm not the greatest fan of having this kind of stuff written in Python, but anyway, looks similar, useful. But yeah, this is also the difference, right? For 30 years or 30 plus years we had top, and then 2021 people's like, hey, have you seen glances of alternative overview? Actually, even Mac and Windows. Anyway, then there's also GTop, because top, A-top, H-top and bpytop were not enough. Soon, 2030, 1 decade later, all letters in the alphabet used for all top variants. 26 certainly. This graph stuff, similar to bpytop and other things, that is, I have to say, so this is a little bit like bpytop that we had the other live stream. And leave in the comments below if you use any of those and why. Like, share this also to other people in this growing channel here for recommendations of, hey, I use that is amazing, and that feature, and all the little Easter eggs and stuff you never find if you don't have colleagues and friends to share this stuff. Hyperfine command line benchmarking tool, hey, that is actually pretty. Maybe I should look into that though. Again, I think I need to do some live stream of packaging all this stuff. Procs, a modern replacement for PS, because again, alternatives, right? I think the innovation in this thing is mostly, hey, it's written in Rust, otherwise like, yeah, I've seen more innovative stuff. HTTP, modern user-friendly command line HTTP client for the API era. That is actually pretty interesting, to be honest. Really cool stuff, I have to say. Like, sure, we had wget, but also innovation of the last 20 years. Wget and curl, also, yeah, curl, the greatest innovation after wget since the invention of sliced bread. And then 2021, hey, have you seen HTTP? That is actually pretty cool, of like this, all this put, post, and so on. Certainly all the other like subversion of version and cache and whatnot exists. That's super cool in my opinion. And that's also what I meant initially when I 10 minutes ago said interactive stuff. Imagine like replacement stuff of SED, like working interactively with regular expressions, maybe highlighting that, like color matching those, what matches and substitutes here. Certainly a lot of cool stuff that can be done. Curly, power of curl with the ease of HTTP. Didn't try all of them out. Certainly we need to package them all in T2, because obviously XH, friendly and fast tool for sending HTTP requests, re-implements as much possible in HTTPs, excellent design, focus on improved performance. So yeah, not invented here and better forever. SOC side, smarter CD. Here's this modern shell prompt stuff that I also wanted to cover in a minute. But yeah, and that is the stuff like Linux innovations or GNU Linux innovations the last 20 years. Yeah, not that much to see really. And like I have the impression with all the serverless, also yeah, serverless, less is more, right? More servers, serverless, got it. And cloud and so on, people working more than ever in secure shell and similar such environments. I have the feeling the innovation of command line stuff currently somewhat exploding. Then we have a second list here on a second website. I think, oh wait a second, this was not that, that was here. Some of them are the same, like BAT, we had that, EXA, we had that. FD, did we fast and user-friendly fire? Actually, we had this two procs, was here, yeah, SD maybe, find and replace, I don't know, maybe I had this two dust. Not sure, did we had, oh, Starship, right, Starship is new. That was not in the, it's like customizable prompt for any shell because prompts. Ripgrab, extremely fast alternative, not sure if we had this in the other, maybe we had Tokay, program that displays statics about your code, number of files, total lines, those files called comments, blanks, groups. Of course there was, what was it, Klog? K lines of code, right? Klog, I think. Basically innovating in that area. Hyperfine, we had this, so yeah, white top, I'm probably in the other, not sure, was there white top? Maybe not, I think was there a, not sure, anyway. Teal, deer, fast, it's a very fast implementation of TLDR, yeah, the other GitHub list just listed TLDR. TLDR not good enough, needed a very fast implementation of that. Displaying simplified examples based on command-driven man page. Bandwidth, I think that wasn't in the other list. Bandwidth, CLI utility displaying current network utilization by process, connection and remote IP and host names. Like, why was this kind of stuff not certainly needed? That a couple of times. I'm not even sure. I know the age top of all the many top variants 15 years ago and maybe still today needs to patch the Linux kernel for some statistics because 2021 the Linux kernel still have not all statistics some top authors would want. Not sure if that works with, because I know some people found the Linux statistic reporting lagging. But yeah, where was the GNU BSD Linux Unix BSD innovation here? Because yeah, that certainly, leave me in the comments below, was it there somewhere hidden? I don't remember that, but yeah, really cool stuff, that kind of stuff that should come with your operating system, to be honest. Grex, a command line tool library for generating regular expression from user-provided test cases. That certainly should be you really need for newbies, right? For regular expression dummies. So certainly handy for some people. RMask, I have to say, nothing much to see. It's like, yeah, written in Raspberry. Yeah, seriously, what the heck for dmask? Like, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the other stuff, so this SOC side and Delta was in the other list already. TP node, template tool enhancing clipboard with save and edit node file function. Something. Bonus, new shell, new type of shell written in Rust. Goal is to create modern shell alternatives that's still based in Unix philosophy, but adapted to the current era. Supports piping and filtering in a way similar to org and SED column view so that you can combine operations SQL or SQL or whatever. I think I mentioned something either earlier and maybe a year ago, and also what I meant with, like, should the Linux, Unix, BSD shells much more powerful and copy or inspire some concepts of Microsoft's PowerShell. Let's quickly go over the, we have some comments, of course. So yeah, welcome everyone. Happy to see so many people tuning in. That is, as usual, amazing. Model citizen is interested in Altivec. Linear algebra, you need to specify more details. Ah, yeah, so you mean Rust. Yeah, so this should optimize with Rust to Altivec, but of course that would not be using the, still not using the cell SP, ESSPUs. Antarctican writes, love man pages that have examples, usage of simple tasks. Yeah, me too. Sometimes, usually of course man pages have examples, but usually when I, with 20 years of experience, I don't need that often, but usually when I need an example, there is none, or there is not the example I'm looking for, obviously, obvious rule of life. Right now, favorite TUI app is Git UI. Does anyone know what's the best wireless USB dongle for BSD? No idea. I would just in Linux or T2, I usually take a look on the kernel drivers, what is in kernel, or also how did you get into T2 Linux? Maybe we answer that at the end otherwise, but yeah, thanks for asking. Can answer that at the end, because I wanted to also quickly shed a light here on, oops, mouse wheel, probably move the mouse wheel. All right, I know how this happened. I had some mouse focused on the title and then, can we, probably should disable this feature. Actually, never use it, super annoying. You touch the mouse wheel, yeah, probably need to disable that. Terminal shell prompts, I mostly looked into that because one, maybe Aston from 1-bit squared and its PCB, open hardware, FPGA and fun stuff. I think on his live stream I saw he was using some fancy prompt and it's like, wow, what's that? And maybe that was something like spaceship or so. So what this does is, it's like instead of a boring prompt here of like good old Unix shell stuff, having there some fancy stuff of clever hostname, username displaying. Also like the hostname, username, I don't really need that much. It's like usually me on my local machine or server. But if you do a lot of remote stuff in cloud and so on, the hostname stuff could actually be useful. Maybe even username, maybe, but host like serverless server 125 and stuff or whatever. Prompt character turns red, last command exits with non-zero exit code. It's like all this stuff, like all this obvious stuff, like why was it not in Unix shells for decades already? Current Git branch and Git repository status. Don't need this so much. I mean, I have my T2 or FPGA stuff or exact image and so on. It's like usually if I work somewhere, I know that I work there, but nonetheless, maybe it's useful for other people. Indicate for jobs in the background, as it's actually, like, sure, why not? Also, do I need this so often? But again, just shows what creativity you can do there. Current Node, yeah, Node.js, so convoluted. People need their current Node.js version in their prompts. Like, seriously, what the heck? Rubyverse, like, yeah, thank you very much. All this stuff I don't really need. Swift version, yeah, whatever. I mostly was into that for the cool, like, as mentioned previously, Hollywood style looking. Otherwise, more interactive, like Sync, the regular expression feature and interactive feature, interactive search. Like, I'm usually more in the productivity improvement stuff and not so much in the styling of like, yeah. So yeah, how to install the stuff, yeah, so this is how this looks, and I should see something like that. So basically, this is, I would say, not as much about usability, unless if you work in a company with like really many repositories, like think you have like, instead of we only have like 5.5 or so, or let's make this a dozen, maybe some, like if you work in Google, Apple, and you have like really 32 repositories, not sure of web stuff, and that App Store Connect, and maybe some people have more than my half a dozen or dozen stuff, maybe then it becomes more usable. So the prompts like fast, like yeah, the fastest prompt of course is that prompt, that good old prompt, that because that is just like instance, like 2021 fancy prompt features, and the advertisements like, hey, that is fast because not in shell script, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, unfortunately this examples here are not as amazing. In Eston's also videos that look more amazing. So there are a couple of those like pure and oops, no, I touched this too much because multi-touch trackpad. So we have spaceship, we have starship because spaceship was not enough, and then we have pure. Maybe I need to package all of them. I think some were in Rust. Also, yeah, you had me at install npms, like, yeah, seriously, certainly not. Anyway, that's mostly it. For that, I would say certainly. On the other hand, I didn't miss those the most, even like indicating red, what actually like indicating the last non-clean command exit in red. So, oops, no, this happened again. Don't need that the most. What I personally did decades ago was root user red and other users, I don't know, was it blue or something. That would be more useful to be at each command line prompt reminded, hey, red is you are doing stuff at root and don't rm-rf also. But otherwise, yeah, shell prompt, leave in the comments below. I personally didn't miss them the most. Some are cool looking, most of the features not really for me, but maybe they are for you. So if you found the super cool stuff or configured the heck out of it, leave it in the comments below. Maybe with some hints I find total must-have killer features that I would need. Here's this last but not least, this 6-pixel bit support stuff for terminals. Wikipedia logo here rendered on an Xterm with VT340 emulation. So that could potentially be much cooler than for this icon stuff. Maybe someone has done that already than this icon font. That's a little bit annoying. Yeah, by the way, this is this kind of prompt that I mean. So, but you also need for that a font, I think. Yeah, power, so you need some power line fonts for that stuff, I think, which is also, again, font patching. And for the icon patching, that broke the JetBrains mono font that I currently use most of the time. So it's a little bit, yeah, need special font support, and when that breaks other regular features of your fonts, and like, yeah. But I have to say, I mean, some lightweight prompt stuff like that, maybe that is for me, or for just looking a little bit cooler. There are also other stuff of having the path stuff here, looking some pixels separated, making this look much more cooler. But again, look over, oh, we had some drop frames usually. Hope we didn't drop too much. Again, eye candy doesn't improve usability. So, yeah. Anyway, let's answer the last questions. Here, Andreas Baumann, Shell and TCA had customizable hooks for almost everything. Still have a book about that. Hey, that sounds amazing. The troll face something. Are you on OnlyFans only for the donations, or is there any media? If people subscribe asking for a friend, of course. Mostly for alternative donation. You never just, when I'm in the process of registering there, thought the poll people, people said only voted polled OnlyFans. So that's what you got. I think so far nobody subscribed there, but if people subscribe, we could post their high quality hardware porn and like this RISC-V and stuff, high definition flash images and stuff. Otherwise, Model System asks, are you using TWM? No, this is Blackbox. I only use, as seen in previous live streams, TWM for testing good old-fashioned vintage retro stuff, because it is just one of those, or the example X11 window manager. So right now I'm using Blackbox, and otherwise I switched on other more modern machines like my Epic Threadripping Overkill built in the office to Sway, and this, of course, Sway comes directly with the window and composition manager, and yeah, don't need that much. And last but not least, there was a question of JES 91 or 95. How did I get into T2? I answered that already a couple of times. Basically, in around 1996, when I only found, well, 1996, how do you discover was with all the, I was more in hardware low-level stuff, but I didn't know assembler. Just didn't find this in the library and magazines and stuff. So I was using Turbo Pascal of all things, what you would use in DOS for your direct hardware and Sound Blaster programming. And so we could teach us quite some stuff. So I learned assembler and high-level math from him, and he learned hardware programming direct, like I/O port and other DMA and interrupt stuff. And Windows always sucked, and we always like Windows was so garbage, and like we were actually trying to do 3D programming, but every 10 minutes this stuff blue screen of desk with Windows 95 and so on. And we like there must be something more stable, like this is garage operating system from some bloody startup there, and this is ridiculous. And we only found Linux by magazine CD, and it's like Debian, like totally annoying to install. It's like, okay, Linux and Unix, there is another world, but like, holy shit, is this bloody Debian annoying to install. And also it mostly sucked anyway in 1996. And we already were on the verge of writing our own operating system, and in retrospect we should have effing done that. That would have been amazing. But by pure chance, I then found, it was probably, was it FreeX or something of that sort? I think that magazine had a Rock Linux 1.2 maybe, or Rock Linux 1 or something of that sort, whatever it was in 1997. And that was like, hey, finally a Linux that doesn't totally suck, and how I would mostly have done my Linux anyway. And then I started to send some patches, like NFS didn't work, and it didn't come with Emacs, and also not with other graphical stuff, maybe like GIMP and so on. So I sent some stuff there, and it was mostly ignored, like it was sending, like spending your time in V90 modem, like analog modem time for sending patches, and then they ignored. And then I basically started my own Rock Linux variant of that, was then desktop Rock Linux. That is, oh, we have more drop frames maybe, yeah. Wi-Fi not as amazing today, 881 drop frames. So that is basically how Rock Linux, desktop Rock Linux started. Later, after a couple of years, we reunited that Rock Linux 2. I became Rock Linux stable release maintainer, putting one of those people keeping that stable and working and testing and all the architectures, PowerPC, Spark and stuff. And then just eventually it's like we wanted to professionalize this, didn't agree with all things how Clay had there some submaster, some subversion add-on of submaster and submitting all the web management stuff. Is like eventually it's like this only waste, like if it's like 90% wasting my time, it's like, I'm sorry, this is not for me, I have to do it differently. I put most time of anyone into Rock Linux, and the submaster, subversion, web front-end stuff only waste my time. And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I have to do it my way. And it's like, yeah, Rock Linux didn't last very long with all my time putting into that. And so T2 is basically the Rock Linux successor, and Rock Linux non-existent anymore because yeah, DOS interrupt 21, yeah, and VGA interrupt 10, I guess it was, but nowadays. So yeah, that's also that. As usual, if you answer that in some details in some minutes ago. Somehow today the Wi-Fi wasn't amazing, but hopefully you learned something. Again, leave in the comments below just some summary of where the terminal innovation here is heading. Fun times. I probably have to, what was it? I think this glances. I have to say this looks really interesting, although for me it mostly is like amazing. This bpytop also looked really interesting. What would be even, of course, if you orchestrate a whole serverless, more servers farm, then of course some huge status widget thing certainly is also sort of a must. Anyway, that's it for this video. Really curious to see what comments we get. As always, I hope you learned something from all the new tools and vintage and retro and background story.